Did Hyperforce screw up the lore of Power Rangers, and does it even affect the TV series? I recently finished all 25 episodes of Power Rangers Hyperforce, and it totaled 69 hours, 45 minutes, and 5 seconds. Now, if you were to watch all 3 seasons of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, including the Alien Rangers saga, that only comes out to an estimate of about 55 hours. So there is a ton of space in this series for lore, not to mention the fact that they travel through time and also go through dimensions. We're going to go through every season of Power Rangers that they touched upon piece by piece and talk about how it affected the lore of Power Rangers. And at the end, we are going to discuss whether this show is actually canon or not. So buckle up and let's get ourselves acquainted with the lore of Hyperforce. From the season of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, we have the character of Aisha returning for the very first time ever since her departure in the 90s. Aisha uses the saber-toothed tiger Zord. I believe this is the first and only time she actually used that Zord in that form. By the time Aisha came around, they had already started to use the Thunder Zords, and so she would have only used the Griffin Thunder Zord at this time. Aisha also returns in the finale where they fight the United Alliance of Evil, but we'll get to that later. One of the things never seen in the show is also that Aisha uses hip-hop keto.
Are you breakdance fighting?
And finally, this gives me a little tiny fan theory. They're getting very hard to come by these days. Zach and Aisha never really interacted, and there wouldn't have been a lot of time before Zach went to the peace conference to teach her anything or to get to know her. But Zach did teach kids in the park and presumably at the youth center. Maybe she picked up some hip-hop keto from his students that he taught, meaning that Zach's class had a lasting impression on the youth in Angel Grove. All right, this is a little bit of a cheat because in honesty, she really doesn't do exactly hip-hop keto. They really just refer to it, but she is dancing to like throw Goldar off. It's confusing him. What are you doing? But she never actually fights him, so technically it's not really hip-hop keto, but she does reference hip-hop keto in it, which is still pretty cool for Power Ranger fans. And it gives a little bit more lore to Aisha because honestly, she's one of the characters that just doesn't get a lot of time to be seen or to develop. The other actors who came in with the Stone Canyon trio, Zeo was really the time they got to grow, and she never really got to do that. Now, I'll include this in the Mighty Morphin lore because we have Santa Claus. Of course, you know that from I'm Dreaming of a White Ranger and then also other series, but Santa has a battleizer. Moving on to Mighty Morphin Alien Rangers, we have the Hyperforce going to Aquitar in 2007 with the Sentinel Knight, and they find out that Hydro Hog, which is the big evil bad guy of the Alien Rangers series, sort of their Lord Zed, he had 2 children, Hogs Jr. and Hydro Jr. The Rangers also go to a dormant volcano on Aquitar. To this point, it's only been described by Zordon as being completely covered in water. The potential of maybe a volcano poking out of the water a little bit is quite possible, but we've never seen that before until now. The Mystic Knights of Tir na Nog, and I finally said it correctly. My very first video on this channel was a fan theory about the Mystic Knights and Mystic Force being connected, and I've gotten this comment over and over and over again. Hyperforce has the Mystic Knights in it, or references it, or they meet them, or something like that. I get those comments all the time. So after watching the show, I can actually confirm that no, they don't. They do not meet the Mystic Knights of Tir na Nog at all. They're not in the show in any way, except for one little reference.
I eyeball Mystic Knight.
Sentinel Knight.
I'm sorry, Sentinel Knight.
But they do meet a team of knights in episode 11, entitled A Ranger in King Arthur's Court, centered around the classic knights of the Round Table. And this puts into lore that after the Mystic Knights of Tir na Nog, we have the Mystic Knights of Loggers. You might be thinking, don't you mean Camelot? But after researching it, apparently Camelot was just like the castle or the court in which they were a part of, but the actual land was called Loggers, and the land of the Mystic Knights of Tir na Nog is, again, a location, like a mythical world. But we would have the Mystic Knights of Loggers, which consists of Lady Guinevere, the White Battle Knight. She is portrayed by Ali Ganino, and she is the only person that comes on this show that does not have some connection to Power Rangers. Most of them are veteran actors, people who have come back, reprising a role, but she has no connection to Power Rangers. She just came on to play this role, and she did a really great job. We have Sir Sir Lancelot, the Orange Battle Knight, Sir Edward Banks II, the Blue Battle Knight, and this is the ancestor of Eddie Banks, who is our Blue Hyperforce Ranger. Now, there is Sir Galahad and King Arthur in this, but they never call on any sort of armor. We do have Merlin, who would be their mentor, just like Cad in the Mystic Knights of Tir na Nog. They would have a wizard be sort of a mentor character to them. And then we have an evil witch, Morgana Le Fay, which is the classic Mystic Knights villain. And she cursed King Arthur and he became the Red Dragon. Again, a little fan theory, this would make me think that King Arthur would be the Red Battle Knight. And maybe Galahad is the Black or Green Battle Knight. I would think they both have a crystal, considering the fact that Lady Guinevere gives Chloe, the Pink Hyperforce Ranger, a pink crystal that creates a armor that is a battleizer for her to use. And I would think if Galahad didn't have powers, why would she give up a stone that they could use to defend their land and give it to her to be taken away? So I'm assuming that he probably does have armor, and so does King Arthur. One of the really important parts about this lore is that it actually is confirming that the Mystic Knights of Loggers, also connecting to the Mystic Knights of Tir na Nog, would be using the morphing grid to morph. So they actually are using the morphing grid. It's not some special power that doesn't have anything to do with Power Rangers. They're confirming that this is the same thing, which really opens it up to wondering if the Beetleborgs are also channeling the morphing grid, if the VR Troopers are channeling the morphing grid, or any shows from the Saban live action universe. And I have a great video about all the crossovers that they should have done back in the day and how they could have done for a cheap price, because that was very important to Saban. It's just such a missed opportunity to have built a universe out of all these different shows. But how cool is it that we actually have another team of Mystic Knights that are now within the lore of Power Rangers? Next, we have In Space. This is the first time they actually changed something in the timeline pretty drastically that you can't really undo. Created a different dimension. In the very first episode of Power Rangers In Space, we see the United Alliance of Evil getting together, having a meal. This is where we have the reveal of Astronema and also the dramatic reveal of the first In Space Red Ranger, and it's a very monumental moment. But Thrax, the son of Rita and Zed, travels back in time to join forces with his parents. Andros is teleported into the Hyperforce ship by Joe, and they explain to him that they really can't explain anything to him, but they're there to help him. But they go down and lots of fighting takes place. We also see Rangers Aisha, Jem from RPM, and Lena Song from SPD. And Zordon gets taken by the Alliance. Now, this isn't the United Alliance of Evil. This is the bad guys from Hyperforce. Thrax and his parents teleport away. And again, this sets up an alternate dimension that eventually becomes a part of the Boom comics into one of the Unlimited comics focused on Hyperforce. Moving on to Time Force. We're set in the year 3016. Hyperforce is at its core an extension of the season of Time Force. Most of our Rangers are students at the Time Force Academy, and we learned that the Time Force officers' training takes 2 years. The first year is all academic in the classroom studying. Very advanced learning environment for multiple learning styles. Audible and visual materials are being used at the same time for whatever people need. In the second year of training, they actually put them out in the field, and that's when they actually get their weapons training, and they pick a specialty that they want to be involved in. We learned that the dean of the Time Force Academy is Dean Hines, and he later gets brainwashed by the Alliance and tries to get them to join the Alliance. Jen Scott, our beloved Pink Ranger, has actually taken to being the history instructor at the Academy. Later on, she moves into being the director of Time Force, so we find out that she actually moves all her way up to the top of Time Force. In episode 13, we find out that one of the friends of the Power Rangers, her name is Abigail. She is another student in the Time Force Academy. She became an officer. And probably one of the coolest things for Time Force fans or Power Ranger fans in general is that we actually have an official Silver Time Force Ranger. The Red Ranger of the series of Hyperforce is named Marv, and he has a brother Joe. We find out later on that Joe is actually the Silver Time Force Ranger, which is really cool because it is actually confirming through Saban that there is such a thing as a Silver Time Force Ranger. In the lore of Power Rangers, we kind of assume that Lucas and Ransik's daughter Nadira lived happily ever after together, but we find out in Hyperforce that is not true. Once again, the Silver Time Force Ranger Joe actually ends up marrying Nadira. You think they did dirty to the fans? Switching that around? Anybody? Are people upset about that? Are you okay with that? I don't know. And the only other real thing about Time Force is that they established that there's no sugar, there's no, junk food. Moving on to SPD, we have Lena Song. She is a ranger that seems to be exclusively played by Malika Lin, who is the GM of this show. This character appears in Soul of the Dragon, the comic books that's kind of the ending Tommy story showing about his last days, but this is actually putting Lena Song into a physical character in the canon of the show, which is really, really cool. And also we see her move from being a Green Ranger, moving up rank to a Blue Ranger. When they travel to the Mystic Force timeline, Rita Repulsa, or as we know her in this period of time, the Mystic Mother, sacrifices herself to create a portal for them to go back and stop the Alliance. The Alliance wanted to stop the Z-Wave, which ultimately was the thing that turned her from being evil to being good again, so she sacrifices herself to stop herself from not becoming the Mystic Mother. Operation Overdrive, a really fun season that I really do enjoy, but we have the Sentinel Knight showing up, and he hid the Corona Aurora after the events of Operation Overdrive. He took the Corona Aurora and he hid it on Aquitar. The Sentinel Knight has somehow separated Excelsior, the sword that he becomes, and he gives that out of his body. Eventually, it makes its way to Vesper, who uses it as a battleizer, becoming the Black Sentinel Ranger. Much like another android, Mac, from Operation Overdrive, and Marv finds out that humans can't use this battleizer. Only an android can use it. Of course, Vesper, the Black Ranger, is an android as well. They never really exclusively said that, the Sentinel Knight's armor can't be used on humans. They never really said that. That's cool that they put that into the lore. The Corona Aurora is destroyed by Chloe, the pink Hyperforce Ranger. She hears a voice in her head that tells her to destroy it. So the Corona Aurora is officially destroyed. It's gone as of 2007. And as stated earlier, Thrax, the son of Rita and Zed, lives. He somehow survived the battle against the Overdrive Rangers and the Legendary Rangers. Although there is no explanation as to how this happened, I would theorize that Volcanos, or one of the bad guys from the Hyperforce series, or must have snatched him out of time right before he almost died, and they took him to the future to help steal some Time Force ships. Power Rangers RPM, a gigantic fan favorite. We have episodes 6 and 7 both within this universe. Chaz Winchester and his family are in the caravan of people trying to get to Corinth that the Rangers come across. Now, if you don't remember Chaz, I didn't remember him either, but he's actually the guy that Summer, the Yellow Ranger from RPM, was supposed to marry and ended up not marrying. But before this family ever made their way to Corinth and saw the RPM Rangers, they were actually in the presence of another team of Rangers, the Hyperforce Rangers. And in the story, Vesper even cuts off a couple pieces of Chaz's beautiful long hair. The Rangers meet Jem at a grinder's facility. This gives a lot more information about Jem and Gemma, which is really cool because we really didn't know much about how they survived until the Rangers came across them, but we find out that they have been forced into labor camps and different things by the robots. Jem in particular was forced to make grinders, which he says he's happy to do because that just means there's more grinders for him to blow up later. Love Jem. Within this episode, Chloe, the pink Hyperforce Ranger, actually says it's boom time. Jem takes a real liking to it and asks if he can use that phrase himself, which is funny that we created an origin for his catchphrase that comes in RPM later. The Hyperforce team works with Jem to break out of the facility, and we know that as the Hyperforce Rangers take off, that Jem is making his way to go save his sister. And they'll blaze through the wastelands, destroying grinder after grinder like the lovable psychopaths that they are. Later on, Jem gets transported to help the Rangers fight the United Alliance of Evil with Andros. The Rangers also meet a character named M, and Jem blatantly asks her, "Did you go to Alphabet Soup?"
Who's he?
He's a friend that we met.
Who are you?
What's your name?
What's your name?
My name's M.
My name's Jem. Yeah? Were you in Alphabet Soup?
How do you know about that?
Because everyone named there besides me and my sister had like a letter for their name. It's those are our home.
I never thought about it that way.
K.
I thought maybe
M.
it was like short for something.
Could be. Money.
Now that I think of it, I've never really had a last name.
And as fans, we would assume that there would be a facility of people, more people who worked there, but we don't know anybody else's name besides Dr. K, Jem, and Gemma. So it's cool to see that they actually brought someone into the lore who is also connected to Alphabet Soup. The first time they're talking with M, she actually overhears them talking about being Rangers, and she asks them if they know about the government think tank that created the Ranger series technology, that being the technology that Dr. K, Jem, and Gemma worked on. Now, it could be another abducted genius, of course, but judging by the fact that she is pretty social, most of them are pretty socially awkward due to low interaction socially throughout their whole entire life. Or in Jem and Gemma's case, they were locked with just the two of them, and all they did was talk to each other and probably kind of went crazy. We might assume that maybe she was one of the people actually holding them there. Maybe she was one of the people we never see their face that's telling Dr. K that she has to keep working, that she's not allowed to go outside. We don't know, but it would be really cool if someday they actually maybe did something with that character. Vesper is taken over by the Vengex virus herself, and she overcomes the Vengex virus, but she actually contains this virus sort of like a digital poison that she can use at will to do terrible things. Let's get into
Super Megaforce.
In episode 18, the Hyperforce Rangers find themselves on the planet of Andrasia. This is the home planet of the silver Super Megaforce Ranger Orion, and they find him there where he had just found his morpher. The planet is totally decimated, but before he escapes the planet, we discover that Orion was assisted by Eddie in learning what exactly the morpher was. So he learned to morph because of Eddie. And a story that he tells his team of Super Megaforce Rangers about shooting down a Armada ship and fixing it up for months was a complete lie. Now, initially, I think it's a bit dangerous to just mess with lore like this, especially something we've seen with our own eyes in the show. But with Super Megaforce being so criticized by people, I don't think it's too upsetting to actually see something different. Honestly, I like the twist a lot. Marv pleads with him how important it is to not tell people about them. Together, they work on the story that Orion ends up telling Gosei, Tenzu, and the other Megaforce Rangers about how he did this all himself, but he was actually assisted by the Hyperforce Rangers. They helped him get off the planet. This gives a really interesting insight and character development to Orion, that he actually knew a lot more about Power Rangers and everything that's going on in the universe than the Megaforce Rangers knew. I think adding some complexity and interest to this character was actually a really great thing, especially when it comes to a character that just doesn't have the time that it deserves. It's awesome, and at its core, I really think this is what Hyperforce really could bring to fans and add something to these characters that we all kind of want to see something more with. Now, this also added a ton of lore to the legendary battle. The Hyperforce Rangers are actually at this battle. Although we never see them on screen in the show, they are running around in the shadows. Now, depicted in the show, Troy and Orion go up to the main Armada ship and they fight Emperor Mavro. Troy takes control of the ship and he ends up shooting down the whole entire fleet, wiping out their whole Armada. Even though he thinks he single-handedly shot them all down, that's actually not completely true. It was actually Vesper installing the Vengex virus, like her own specialty poison, that caused the ship to do this sort of self-destruction and shoot down its whole entire fleet. And in episode 19, when we get into the Shattered Grid series, the GM for those two episodes actually confirms as Alpha 55 that the Armada was completely destroyed during the legendary battle. Now, this changes some lore about the Vengex virus in this dimension. Fans know that Nate Silva in Beast Morphers accidentally brings Evox to life, which is later revealed that Evox is simply Vengex mixed with snake DNA. But the Vengex virus actually was in this universe prior to that. It's probably still somewhere out there in space in some sort of microchip that survived the blast. And during the legendary battle, the Rangers actually go down and fight with some of the other Rangers. Now, you may say, well, we don't see them. But this legendary battle, as most people know, is insane. It's absolutely crazy. I mean, they're trying as hard as they can to use some of the Sentai footage, but of course there's a bunch of teams that are still seen in the background of these shots. Sometimes they're not even really in the background. They're like right up front, and if you blink, you miss it, but they're there. So it's quite possible that the Hyperforce Rangers are fighting in this battle, and we never actually see them because we don't see a lot of these people. Most people hate the ending to Super Megaforce, the team falling on the ground after all the other Rangers fly up to the sky, and they just walk away, and Troy throws his cutlass into the sand, and they just go off. But Hyperforce reveals that as they're leaving, Orion says he needs to go to the bathroom real quick. He runs over to the side where the Hyperforce Rangers are all hiding. They tell him they'll give him a ride back because, of course, he was talking about going back to his planet, but he actually ends up declining it, saying he wants to spend more time with his team. Marv, the red Hyperforce Ranger, actually wants to take the cutlass with him. He picks it up, but Orion ends up taking it and saying, hey, no, this is ours. You can't do that. The Shattered Grid series from Boom Comics. The team goes to the Shattered Grid. Yeah, this is the first and only time that a live action show has a link to something from the comics that is pretty widely considered not canon to the show. Jason David Frank portrays Lord Draken in this. It officially gives JDF the title of Lord Draken because up to this point, Lord Draken was nothing he had ever touched. It was just it was Tommy. It was Tommy, the character in Boom Comics. But this actually shows that Jason David Frank officially played Lord Draken. Although all the controversy and learning that JDF actually despised Lord Draken and absolutely hated him, along with Kyle Higgins, who appears in the episode before. Kyle Higgins is one of the guys who works on the Boom Comics that apparently JDF absolutely despised. It's just a weird feeling in your stomach after everything that's happened. But of course, if you're watching it live at the time, none of this would have been out there in the air, so you would have just been like, hey, this is really cool. Now, that's all the lore that I have found in the show. The show is so long that I'm sure there are plenty of things I probably missed that I could have added into it. I am going to bring up a few things they got wrong. Aisha's timeline problem. In episode 2, they traveled to Angel Grove on Halloween, October 31st, 1994. The next day or two, they are contacted by Zordon, and he calls Aisha to come mentor the team. But Aisha doesn't even come to Angel Grove until November 2nd of 94 for Ninja Encounter Part 1. The power transfer episode where she becomes a Ranger isn't for another week on November 9th, the power transfer Part 2. So being a mentor makes no sense at this point. She doesn't have experience to be a mentor. At this point, she doesn't have experience being a Ranger. So when she says a line like, if I know one thing about Rita Repulsa, it's we have to be prepared. Rita doesn't even return until February 13th, 1995, the wedding Part 1. This timeline didn't make any sense. If they would have bumped it to maybe Halloween in 1995, that would have worked probably better, or just bumped it to like 1996 or something where she would be out of the Rangers, but Zordon brought her back. The Christmas episode of Hyperforce also has a big, gigantic plot hole in it. The Rangers morph at the North Pole. I'm Dreaming of a White Ranger sets up the ground rules that the magic of the North Pole does not allow the morphing grid powers. This should not be able to happen. It was established in the lore a long time ago. One of the things they mess up as far as Time Force is that Wes, when they're doing an NPC, calls Jen Janice. Her name is actually Jennifer. That's confirmed. But honestly, I understand it is so easy to trip up. These are all live streamed. They don't edit and go back and fix things or change this or double check these things. They're in the moment. So I completely understand. It's a really nitpicky thing to bring up. I'm not trying to give them a hard time about that. But as a fan, when you're going to portray a former Ranger, you really have to take seriously. In the finale, we see Zach Eubanks, one of the owners of Hyperforce RPG, the company that is doing this show. He is playing a lot of NPCs in this episode. Now, a quick reminder, I watched almost 70 hours of this show. Breaking Bad is only about 50 hours. The entire series. Don't mean to come off mean or negative, but it took some determination to get through this show and binge the whole thing. And yes, I have some complaints. I'm sorry. I'm going to bring up a few things that I think were wrong. I think that Zach's go-to tabletop character personality is to be the most polarizing kind of version he can be. Someone who's maybe a little rude or difficult to work with, or someone you have to really work, to get them to trust you or something like that. And hey, if that's your go-to, creating your own character, that's totally your choice. I have no problem with that at all. When you're representing a character like Katie from Time Force, Katie is one of the friendliest, kindest, always willing to stick up for the weak person type of character.
Katie, where is your morpher?
I don't know.
I do it
People's elbow.
while winking at you.
While winking at Jack?
Yeah. Making that elbow drop, I'm showing him how it's done.
All right.
He plays her off as this very boastful, competitive. It just doesn't sit well. That's not Katie's character. She is not that person. And later they portray like Trip.
You can't tell me that later.
Who made you a ranger? Do you not have any special abilities?
Okay, Trip. We gotta work together here, all right?
Of course.
I kind of gathered
Well,
that.
no,
but
what I mean is, I don't see anymore, so I must be smarter than you, and I deduce this faster than you. So, basically, just...
taught us to be the ranger that we are today.
So she picked you even though you don't have any special abilities.
You know what, Trip?
Playing him off as kind of looking down on others. And that's the complete opposite of Trip's character. Not to mention the fact that Jen, Lucas, Wes, and Eric didn't have special abilities. It's only him and Katie. So why would he act like that? This continues into other characters they did too, like Sentinel Knight tells Marv it's okay that the Chrono Aurora is given to the bad guys. Oh, we've lost it before. It's not that big a deal. But yet we had a whole season where it's like, we can never let these get into the wrong hands. So that was a little weird. He plays Santa Claus, and Santa Claus is just super rude to everybody. I don't understand why Santa Claus is rude. Santa Claus is supposed to be like a happy, whimsical character. He's always been that way. I know it sounds like I'm really hating on Zach. And Zach, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be mean. It's nearly impossible to do this type of thing perfectly. I mean, I understand it. I'm not hating on them, but taking beloved characters like these characters and just going with kind of the same basic template personality that you want to play it as isn't just, they didn't research it. It creates a really sad lore to the show because the Time Force team have become jaded and like awful people. They're not nice people now. And it's sad to see that in the show. And again, I know I'm being very nitpicky, but remember, almost 70 hours, all 9 seasons of The Office. And yeah, even the ones without Steve Carell comes out to 80. It's a ton of time. This is a debatable thing as far as if they got it wrong, that the Shattered Grid was very openly labeled as not canon to the show. So the fact that they went to the Shattered Grid, does it eliminate the possibility of the show being canon? Maybe. So finally, let's get down to it. The final step in this video, Saban's Power Rangers Hyperforce is an official Power Rangers season. That is the label that Saban Brands put on the show. Now, you might interpret that as, yeah, it's canon, it's official, but Saban is not going to say anything else, especially now that they don't have Power Rangers anymore. That's with Hasbro. So this is really kind of up for debate. What does official mean? Now, Andre from Black Nerd Comedy, who plays Eddie Banks, the Blue Hyperforce Ranger, he posted a video the day that the show was premiering.
Completely different characters altogether. So if you're one of those people who is trying to figure out, well, what does the continuity take place with this? Does this fit within the canon of Power Rangers? Don't think that hard about it, yo. Just accept it for what it is. Just have fun with it. All the other franchises that you know, your Marvels, your DCs, your Disneys, your everything, they are able to have various forms of their characters be displayed in some form of media without it always having to make sense within continuity. Let Power Rangers do that right now.
Truly understand saying it's just for fun, but I think when people preface a project with that statement, it sort of implies we aren't doing our research, so don't get upset. But more importantly, it's telling the audience this is how you have to enjoy it. For me, overanalyzing and trying to find a way to connect and make sense of all this lore is the fun part. As a fan, I really enjoy doing that. So does that mean a diehard fan like myself, this isn't for me? I'm not allowed to watch it and enjoy it, or at least I can't say anything if they mess it up. And I'm not trying to get in a fight with Andre. That would be stupid. He's a Power Ranger. He has no Oceanic Trident, and I don't want to fight with that. But then in the opposite direction, in several interviews with Peter, who played Marv, who also plays Preston in Ninja Steel, he does say that he's really excited to be creating more lore for Power Rangers. And again, this is debatable. Peter doesn't exactly have the final say in the project as far as if it's canon, but as some can argue that Boom Comics, our official Power Rangers licensed project, does the fact that this has real actors in it portraying these characters, does that make it part of the live action universe being different from the comics? Now, I have been a diehard fan of Power Rangers since I was 2 years old, and this series was looming over me for the last 6 years. I knew I needed to watch it for my own mental health. Knowing there's potentially lore out there that I am not aware of really makes me feel like a bad fan. But I have done it. I have completed the series, and I want to give an actual review of the series and go more into depth about it. But right now, I am watching through the fireside chats. They did a live stream after every show that goes anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes long, depending on the week. So that 70 hours I've watched, well, I'm not done yet. Now, what are your thoughts on the lore that Hyperforce brings to Power Rangers? Do you think that it should be considered canon? Do you think that it should not be considered canon? Tell me your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great one, guys. Man, this was a long road to get to the end of this video.